Hello, Fremont family. My name is Bart Melhop, and I'm one of the elders here at Fremont. And this Sunday's sermon is on the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 21 through 43, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. Then he came upon one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." And he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood of 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt her body that she was healed of the disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power had gone out of him, immediately turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But he put them all outside, and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years old. And they were overcome immediately with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. In these verses of Mark, we hear about two miracles of healing with the theme of human despair and hopelessness, meeting with the power of God and Jesus, and about the power of faith. We hear first about Jairus, one of the synagogue rulers, who begs Jesus to come to his house to heal his daughter who is dying. Jesus begins to walk to this house, but as the crowd grows in size and follows him and Jairus, another sick woman suffering from a lifelong chronic bleeding illness intervenes. The woman has faith that Jesus can help her. She hopes that in just touching the cloak of Jesus, that he will heal her. After she touches his cloak, Jesus senses the flow of his healing power move from himself to this sick woman, and he stops and searches for this person who has just touched him. When she admits that she touched him for his healing power, he acknowledges that her strong faith has healed her. This woman's faith has rewarded her with the miracle of healing. Meanwhile, Jairus waits through the delays of the crowds and the first healing of the bleeding woman. By now, the friends of Jairus inform him that his daughter is dead and that he should stop bothering Jesus. But hearing these pessimistic pronouncements, Jesus says to Jairus, Don't be afraid. Just believe. Jesus and his 3 disciples finally arrive at the door to Jairus' house. And Jesus sees and hears the wailing and the mourners over the pronouncements that the girl is not. But Jesus pronounces that the girl is not dead, only asleep. Jesus enters the house and takes the girl's hand and commands for her to get up, and she does. And Jesus is shown in these verses that he is the Lord of life and death. People can turn away from helplessness and fear and instead simply believe. The one condition for God to work in our lives is that we trust him, that we believe the very nature of the relationship between God and humanity is that we're called to a trusting, dependent love and obedience. This is the biblical meaning of faith. This is the only acknowledgement of God's power. God bless you.